Don't go away because as you see what's coming up next, it's back to basics time with Fred.
Y'all know what back to basics is. 5-10 minutes at most, some basic stuff. And this is actually suggested to me by someone else that we should talk about how to stretch your modeling dollars. So, and the focus of this is narrowing your focus. Did you get all that? Focus is narrowing your focus. Okay, cool. This is the first of several back to basic sessions we're going to do on this. So this is kind of a quick intro overview, and then we're going to dive deep on each of these three pieces. Of course, the best way to stretch your dollars is not spend any money to begin with. I get that, okay? But you're going to spend money because it's your hobby. It's what you enjoy doing. So some things to think about as you go through here, and I've put it into three basic categories, as you can see on the screen. Authenticity, time and location, and what's good enough. So again, this is a quick overview. It won't be the full deep dive on this. Authenticity, how closely you follow the prototype. This kind of goes to good enough also. Do you really want to have it exactly rivet by rivet and so forth? Or you just kind of sort of want to model that area, the flavor of. Are you doing prototype? Are you doing freelance? There is a cost to doing freelance, of course. That means, if you know what freelance means, it's totally whatever you want to do. That means you have to come up with your own color scheme, your own decals, and there's some expense in that. Or do you want to do prototype? And like Jack Burgess, you want to do every single thing the Yosemite Valley had on the railroad that day of that month of that year. A lot of scratch building involved. Stretch the dollars, kind of, sort of, but there's also some expense there when you go, look, they released a new brass steam locomotive, and that's exactly right. So then the cost goes up. So there's a little bit of thought there. What type of equipment are you going to run? How authentic to the railroad and where you're going to be do you want to be? Give you a little case study here. Or example, the Santa Cruz and Felton, you know, that's what we primarily model in our basement. It has an interchange with the Southern Pacific at Watsonville Junction Yard. In 1981, there never was an auto rack that came through there because they always went up. There was never a trailer on flat car because it always went up the valley. Why would you send it up and down and around the coast when you could just run it mostly flatland up the valley? So I don't need to buy any auto racks. I don't need to buy any trailer on flat cars. I did. They were sold at a train show because I didn't know at the time when I bought them. They're all gone. Operations. How true do you want to be to the operations of that railroad? The closer you want to be, the more prototypical you want to be. And ops, the more prototypical you need to be on the equipment. That's probably going to add some expense. And then, of course, the location. Model the mountains, model the coast, model inland. There's a little bit of a difference in cost there. But here's the thing. How much of that railroad do you want to model? That's part of the location question as well. You want to model a small subdivision? You want to model a whole division? Biggest expenses there is going to be the house to support the thing. Okay, so time and location. We kind of talked about this a little bit before. If you narrow your focus to a specific time and date, you don't need all that equipment that your railroad once upon a time. Think back to Jack Burgess. A day, of a month, of a year, that's all he needed to model. He didn't need all the other stuff. We're modeling 1981. If that piece of equipment, oh man, that looks really good, was made after 1981, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. Now, Barry and I have talked about this before. Some models have been released in their post-1981 state. And specifically, they'll have the lube, okay? And the cots, well, no, not the wheel dots, but they'll have the cots that will be the 3-panel or the 4-panel or the however many panel. Well, those weren't in existence before 1981. But that car was made perhaps in the 60s or 70s. Well, guess what? That's a decal. That's an easy fix, okay? But those new reefers, for example, that have all the refrigeration unit on the outside mounted up there, I don't need any of those. Those were not around in 1981. Those were not around in 1981. By the same token, I don't need any of those shorter Pacific Fruit Express wood reefers and so on and so forth. So I narrow that scope. I don't need to have all this. I need to have that. It's interesting though that of all the Pacific Fruit Express and Southern Pacific Fruit Express SPFE cars that are out there on the market, there's like 18 different versions that are appropriate for my era.
Ooh. Big schemes.
And we got them all. And one example of all of them, okay? More of some than others because there are more of them on the road, okay? Not a single UPFE on the layout. Does that surprise anybody? Probably not. So again, it's kind of era, time frame. Is it going to be narrow? Is it going to be broad? You know, Tom modeled the 50s, 60s, and maybe even the 70s, right? And that made Tom happy, and that's okay. Okay? I'm not doing that. Mine is this big, okay? So you're not going to see any wood box cars except maybe sitting somewhere for maintenance away or in a gully or something like that. But you will see more modern stuff. Are you doing branch line or main line? Well, if you're doing main line and you're doing the SP, that means you're going to run a bunch of SD units lashed together. I'm doing branch line for the most part. I'm doing a yard interchange. So we'll have some 6-axle diesels, but I don't need a fleet of them. I need a few to represent that on the layout, off the layout. Okay. The rest of the world sort of thing. So you can kind of think about how that works as well. Of course, I've seen some guys with branch line like, ooh, I think I'll have a couple of these. Ooh, I think I'll have a couple of those. I'll have a couple of those. I'm like, dude, if you put all those locomotives for your freelance railroad on your railroad, you would have no room for anything else, just the locomotives alone. What's good enough? And this comes from who? Who was famous for good enough? Alan McClellan, absolutely. Is it close enough for what you want to do, or does it have to be perfect? How close to exact do you want to be? We don't all need to be Jack Burgess and have it down to the itty-bittiest little rivet on a locomotive. You know, Jack Burgess has modeled some things that are on his railroad that will never move on the railroad because they did not move even in that month, in that year on the Yosemite Valley. But they're gorgeous models, but they never move out of the roundhouse. They never move out of the maintenance away yard. Most of us probably won't do that. How close to perfect? Do you have to have museum quality equipment running on the railroad? Or is operator quality good enough for what you want to do? Sometimes you don't have a choice because the manufacturer released a car that really fits everything else. And you go, oh man, and it's like museum quality. I really don't want it, but it's that one car you've always wanted. And you just splurge on that one thing. But you don't need a whole fleet of cars that look like that. Are you okay with a stand-in model? Or does it have to be an exact replica? And part of this is not just your dollar, but your time as well. So you can take that car that's close enough and then customize it. And Mark Norman will want to talk to you about that, about how you super detail that and get you to submit that for a merit award and that's fine. So again, do you need it highly detailed or kind of sort of detailed? What's the word there? Manufacturer details okay, or modeler applied details? What's important to you? How much time, how much effort do you want to do? But it all rolls back to how authentic do you want it to be? What's the time and location for you? And what's good enough for you? Okay, as I said, this is just a quick overview. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into each of those three over the next 3 back to basics sessions. And I think I've got 5 or 6 sessions lined up, but only 3 more on this. Good enough? All right, questions? Ron, I think we're now officially adjourned.
Thank you, Fred.
Let me set the timer for 5 minutes.
Yeah.